The Pittsburgh Steelers need to force Aaron Rodgers into a decision, or they should move on. That and more on today's edition of Locked On NFL.
The new Locked On NFL. The madman Tyler Rowland is your double shot of NFL espresso, with the Locked On local experts on every major story. Get ready, Rowland is revving up. The new Locked On NFL starts now. Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Football fans, welcome into the Locked On NFL podcast, bringing you a double dose of the NFL's biggest stories with help from our local experts that know your favorite teams like no one else. I am your host, the madman, Tyler Rowland, joined today by Locked On NFL expert Lauren Cox. On today's episode, we're going to take a look at some remaining mysteries with some veteran players. We're going to start with Aaron Rodgers in Pittsburgh. We'll talk about Jalen Ramsey and a return to the Los Angeles Rams, and we'll talk about some veteran wide receivers that are still free agents. Before we dive into all of it, do want to thank you for making Locked On NFL your first listen and for being an everydayer here with us at the Locked On Podcast Network, where it's your team every day. Lauren, we're past the NFL draft. The Pittsburgh Steelers have still not signed Aaron Rodgers. We're into May. Do you think that we are to a point where it is time to question just how certain we are that Aaron Rodgers is going to the Pittsburgh Steelers? And if you are the Steelers, are you saying, hey, we need to know right now?
And we've kind of run out of excuses. Well, we'll wait for the draft and see who we draft, or we'll wait for the compensatory pick time to come up. Or
exactly.
Now it's go time. OTAs are starting soon. You got to get in the building and learn the playbook.
Yeah, and I think if you're the Steelers, it would be one thing if Aaron Rodgers had been on the team. If Aaron Rodgers was on the team, knew the playbook, knew his guys, all of that, I would be like, yeah, let Rodgers take his time. Who cares? He'll show up at training camp and it'll all be fine. But Aaron Rodgers is going to be on a brand new team. And what Arthur Smith does on offense is very different from what Aaron Rodgers wants to do on offense, operating in center, having all the plays at his discretion and being able to move things around. Arthur Smith wants to be under center. He wants to play action and have you turn your back to the defense, which is all things that I don't think that Aaron Rodgers at his age wants to do. You got to move around on those bootlegs. So finding the balance on offense of what Aaron Rodgers does well and what Arthur Smith wants to do within his DNA as a play caller, that is going to take time. So if you're the Steelers, I don't think you can afford to let Rodgers take all the time in the world. We thought it would be done by now. It's not done by now. And I think there are legitimate football reasons why it's a concern that it's not done right now.
Yeah, it's not as though Rodgers couldn't figure it out, but it's about getting the best version of Rodgers, right? Getting time with receivers. He's smart. He can, if he comes in late, he can make it work, but you might get 70% then as opposed to 100%. And we're 70% of 41-year-old Rodgers, not 70% of prime MVP Rodgers. It just seems like it would be in his best interest too to want to get things rolling here quickly. Even if I know he doesn't want to work hard at OTAs or whatever, just at least be in the building, be a part of the organization now. It seems like there's no downside. What are you waiting for?
Yeah, and I think that you kind of hit on something like, oh, he doesn't want to work. He doesn't. Well, my thing is, if you get 70% of Aaron Rodgers, it totally defeats the purpose of having Aaron Rodgers. You want Aaron Rodgers if you're the Pittsburgh Steelers because it gives you the best opportunity to win as many football games as you possibly can right now. But if you know that you're getting a 70% version of Rodgers, or a guy that's not fully locked in, or a guy that isn't going to have enough time in the building to fix these issues that are going to crop up and to make sure that they're on the same page with the offensive coordinator, if you're getting an already diminished version of the diminished version of Aaron Rodgers that exists, then I question how it's even worth it for the Steelers. And are they going to be able to accomplish the goal that's the point all along, which is to maximize wins? At some point, I start to wonder, should the Steelers seriously just move on? And I think of it in two different ways. So number one, there is, what is your long-term goal if you're the Pittsburgh Steelers? And then two, there is what you have on the roster. So number one, your long-term goal for the Pittsburgh Steelers seems to be, we're going to try to get a quarterback next year, right? I mean, that has to be the plan for them. They got Will Howard in the 6th round, and they're probably going to bring in Aaron Rodgers, and they brought back Mason Rudolph. at some point, you're telling the world, hey, we're looking to get our quarterback next year. Hey, we're not doing it now. And if you want to get the best chance at a rookie quarterback next year, then why would you have Aaron Rodgers at quarterback? If you want to set yourself up to get one of the top quarterbacks and you didn't trade down to get another first-round pick next year, you traded to get DK Metcalf and lose draft picks, how are you conceivably going to get up and get your quarterback of the future if you have Aaron Rodgers dragging you to 7 games? For me, I look at it and I say, Will Howard is the option. Go with Will Howard. It's just like I said with Shedeur Sanders. If Will Howard hits, then hey, you found your quarterback. Wow. If he doesn't, then you're set up perfectly to draft the next guy next year, which is what you seem like you want anyways.
It feels like they're kind of stuck in this rock and a hard place thing where Mike Tomlin is too good of a coach and there's too much talent on this team to tank and lose. I mean, you've got some key veteran players that you're trying to make the most out of here and extend the careers of Cam Haywood and TJ Watt. Like, those guys aren't here to lose. And they brought in Darius Slay. Like, these are older veteran players to win, but at the same time, quarterback is that important. Like, I just don't think Tomlin is going to sign up for not trying to lose games, but not maximizing every possible window to win. And Rodgers clearly is going to be a better opportunity for that than Mason Rudolph and Will Howard. So do they just keep waiting?
I mean, I totally agree on that, but we do have to factor in that, Will Howard is a guy who did just win the national championship for the Buckeyes. And something that I didn't realize is he's from the Pittsburgh area, and that might make it easier for the fans to accept this. And our guys over at Locked On NFL Draft talked about that.
The Pittsburgh Steelers selected Will Howard in the 6th round, I believe. Yeah, sixth round, ninth pick in the 6th round. He was QB 8 in the 2025 NFL Draft, Keith. And I think them passing on Shedeur multiple times, passing on Will Howard multiple times, and then getting him in the 6th round, I think it all but basically stamps that Aaron Rodgers will be the quarterback of the Pittsburgh Steelers for the 2025 NFL season. So you got Mason Rudolph and Will Howard currently under contract, and then you're just waiting on Aaron Rodgers. I believe Aaron Rodgers is going to be the guy. I'm going to throw this out there to you. I saw a quote. The Pittsburgh sources from the Pittsburgh Steelers have said post-draft they were never going to draft Shedeur Sanders, that they have their eyes pinned on the 2026 QB class or the QB class for the 2026 NFL draft.
I think it's going to be interesting, DP, because I think the momentum built around Will Howard. I think if he gets to training camp and he has the opportunity to make a couple throws, I think the fan base could get excited, right? And we know that storylines also sell, right? As far as, like we said, him being a hometown kid in front of the hometown fans, right? And they'll think that that's a cool story. And then there is talent there. And I'll say this again, and even past him being a 6th round pick, I like Will Howard as a quarterback. I think there's a lot there to pull out and develop, point blank, period.
See, I'm with my guy, Keith Sanchez. They're like, I think you let Will Howard take reps and you let Will Howard get out there. Is he going to be better than Aaron Rodgers? No, but if you're the Steelers and you want to get that 2026 QB, but also sell to the fans, hey, we're trying to win, Will Howard seems like a nice mixture there. You might be able to do all that.
I just wonder if they look at this and say, even if we start Will Howard, we have enough talent on our roster that's going to win us a minimum of whatever, 4 or 5 games. And so that's not going to be number 1 pick in the draft. We might be in the top 10, but not. So we're going to have to trade up either way. We're not going to be so terrible that we're picking at the very, very top of the top 5. So what's the difference then in between if we're trading up from the 8th pick or trading up from the 15th pick? If we try and win some more football games, we might as well at least give something to have a good product on the field.
Lauren, I get what you're saying, but the difference might be an extra 1st round pick. That might be the difference between 15 and 8, to be honest with you. So interesting to see play out, but there are other veterans out there whose situations are still unresolved. We'll talk about Jalen Ramsey and then some potential edge rushers that are still on the market, could be traded as well. Do want to let you guys know that today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel Sportsbook. The NBA playoffs are in full swing, and every night delivers highlight-worthy performances, major momentum shifts, and can't-miss moments. Whether it's a game-winning shot or a breakout player, there's never been a better time to get in on the action. FanDuel makes it easy to stay in the game before tip-off and live with player props, performance trends, same-game parlays. Fans have more ways than ever to play smart and win big. Which player do you think is going to show up in the biggest moments? You can bet on them to hit a clutch three-pointer. You can bet on your favorite team to win the game, to cover. Doesn't matter. Are you new to FanDuel? It's the perfect time to sign up. Head to FanDuel.com and place your first $5 bet. If it wins, you'll get $200 in bonus bets. Make every moment more with FanDuel, official sports betting partner of the NBA. All right, Lauren, let's continue today's edition of Locked On NFL. We talked about the Aaron Rodgers situation in Pittsburgh and why I think if the Steelers really want a quarterback in 2026, they should just go with Will Howard. But we'll move on to some other veteran options who could potentially be traded still, some veteran options that are still available on the market as well. And it starts with Jalen Ramsey, who got a ton of pop over draft weekend as a trade option in a reunion with the Los Angeles Rams. Could make sense, according to our guys from Locked On Rams.
Big picture takeaways. You mentioned the Rams not drafting a cornerback high, not seemingly prioritizing that position as much as a lot of people thought they were, including myself. And the question now is, did they do that because they are in on Jalen Ramsey? So that's kind of the next big takeaway for me. Could Jalen Ramsey be the answer at cornerback in 2025 for the Rams? Well, Ian Rappaport, he reported during the draft that the Rams are one of the teams interested in bringing in Jalen Ramsey. And then that also is consistent with what Les Snead was saying, that they had discussions with the Dolphins. And of course, Ramsey's contract, that is the biggest hurdle in bringing him back. But hey, if they can find a way to get a deal done, bring him back to LA. Yes, he's a cornerback over 30, still really top 10 in most categories at that position. And you're looking at really a short window with this nucleus with Matthew Stafford and Devontae Adams. It makes a lot of sense to me. And that could be the biggest reason why you didn't see them take a quarterback in the draft.
All those pieces fit together really snugly, don't they? I mean, when you all the things that you just mentioned, Doug, are exactly why I think this is probably pretty likely to happen.
It does just make a ton of sense. I mean, the Rams are a team that always goes all in. We know Jalen Ramsey likes it out there, and he's a guy who won't stand for a team that isn't set to win. So it does make a ton of sense, but the money, it's $21 million the team would have to take on. There's just no way that the Rams are going to take on all of that cap. The Dolphins will have to take some of it.
Yeah, but the Dolphins don't have much salary cap space to work with there either. So it's kind of like what we talked about with Myles Garrett, where it's like, man, at some point it becomes hard to trade him, not because of the compensation of the draft picks, but just like the financial restrictions here. Because he's got a bunch of salary in dead cap, or I mean in void years that then come on the Dolphins book. So like, if neither of these two teams has the room to pay for it, like that becomes maybe even the bigger obstacle than where exactly he's going to fit in the Rams depth chart, or how the championship window is in Miami. It's more like, well, can anybody afford this in either direction?
Well, I think that's what makes the deal most complicated is Ramsey would probably have to rework the deal in some way to make the money movable. And now you have an agent, you have two different teams, you have a player, everyone's looking to get what they want. And that's probably why this is something that didn't get done. And it may take some time to get into the summer. I'm thinking June 1st is a big date for these type of things. I'm certain that the Jalen Ramsey contract will still be difficult to deal with, but after June 1st, teams, it's not just about Ramsey's deal or how it changes. It's teams get a little more clarity with what they can do going forward, and it helps them kind of manage the money when you get past June 1st. That's why you have post June 1st cuts and designations and things like that, because there is like a financial turnover with June 1st for the NFL in some way. So maybe that would make it more conceivable to happen. And it's just a waiting game of, hey, we need to wait until we get to a place where the money makes this possible.
And I've seen the likes of Albert Breer and others speculate that could Jalen Ramsey move to safety at this stage of his career and extend it, but to fit, in Los Angeles where they have veterans at corner with Darius Williams and Ahkello Witherspoon. Like they don't necessarily have a huge need. They need long-term, like they could use a future, like a long-term cornerback, a rookie to develop, but Ramsey doesn't really solve the long-term there. But could you find a role for everybody in the secondary by making him more transient? So maybe he plays some slot and plays some safety, and they ran a lot of 3 safety looks in the Rams defense as well. Like they've got some opportunities there to get creative, to get the most out of him at this stage of his career.
No, I agree. And I think that's the way that he should be used. During his time in Los Angeles, he had moments of where he was in the star position, which is that versatile slot cornerback type guy. But I agree with you that, as we've seen throughout the annals of NFL history, talented cornerback gets into his 30s, transitions to safety. You know what I mean? That's just an extender. And Ramsey's a guy you want around the ball. So if you do use those 3 safety looks, you use him as that physical nickel on early downs, then you get him closer to the ball, closer to the line of scrimmage where he can use those ball skills, those playmaking instincts, and it would make a ton of sense. But outside of the Rams, are there any other spots that you think would make sense?
Not really. It just seems to me like he's a guy who, like, the familiarity there is the one reason why a team wants to go and make that big splash, because we just haven't seen the appetite be there for Ramsey. There's a personality and a star power there that not every team wants to sign up for, kind of, out of the blue, right? The Rams are familiar with it, and they know, Sean McVay has the relationship, and you can handle that pretty well. But beyond that, I think at this stage of the process, I don't think a team's out there ready to make that big splash in the secondary unless, a big injury happens sometime between now and week 1.
No, I agree. I think there are only 2 teams that really come to mind, and they're both NFC North teams. I think the Minnesota Vikings could look for a player in that mold. They lose Cam Bynum at safety. Harrison Smith obviously getting older. If Ramsey is really ready to do kind of a versatile transition to safety, that can make some sense. And then the Green Bay Packers, Jair Alexander's situation, maybe they resolve that. Maybe they figure it out. That's probably where it's going. But even outside of Jair Alexander, I'm not enamored with the Green Bay Packers cornerback room. Keshawn Nixon is just okay. The Packers are a team that seems like they need some of that swagger. That I feel like such an old millennial when I say swag, Lauren. It's like, man, I remember when that was cool. Now everyone says aura. I still like moxie. But either way, whatever you want to call it, Jalen Ramsey has that. And the Green Bay Packers are a young team, and I think that they could maybe use a little bit of that piss and vinegar that you get from a guy like Jalen Ramsey. Listen, I like the piss and vinegar guys. I'm a piss and vinegar guy myself, all right? So I would take Jalen Ramsey in Green Bay. I think that would make a ton of sense for their roster and where their team is at right now.
Well, that's sort of what they're trying to get rid of in Jair Alexander, right? Like that it became a little bit too much of that, and I don't know that I don't think they can afford to pay Alexander $25 million and pay Jalen Ramsey $28 million. No. So one would have to go, and then you replace them with an older version of the same style of personality. I mean, maybe it just fits better with Green Bay specifically, but I don't know. Jalen Ramsey to me seems like a LA Miami star guy, and Green Bay might not be quite the stage he wants.
I totally do agree with you there, but I would say last few years, 15, 16, 17, 10, 17, like Jair Alexander's problem is the injuries. And that's why he's not. So he's got the mouth. He's got the injuries. He's good when he plays, but Jalen Ramsey may be a little more durable and a better player, in my opinion, and has been throughout his career. So like that would be a factor. But I understand the concerns, and you're right. The money does make it super, super difficult going forward. But there are other trades out there. We see like a Mark Andrews, a Dallas Goedert. Trey Hendrickson still hasn't had his situation resolved with the Bengals. If there's any of those 3 veteran names that have kind of been floated out there recently, which one do you think is most likely to be moved?
I was going to say the one I'd be most, if I'm a team and I want to take a flyer on a guy, the guy I'd go after is Michael Mayer from the Las Vegas Raiders, the second round pick years ago from Notre Dame. I think he's been hurt. It obviously fell right behind the Brock Bowers this past season, so he's kind of out of the loop there. And I feel like you could get him for pennies on the dollar and still get a player that I think has a ton of potential in there, and he's cheaper on a rookie contract than like Hendrickson. You got to trade and pay for. Like I don't. It's so hard at this stage of the process after the draft. Most teams have used all their cap space on free agents, and now it's like, well, we don't have the money to sign you to a big extension if we trade for you now, unless we push a bunch of it in the future. So it'd have to be a team that's like all in on winning a Super Bowl this year and not worrying about paying for it down the line, or the New Orleans Saints, but I think they're kind of coming around to their salary cap stuff too.
Yeah, they're trying to figure that stuff out. I do agree that it makes it more difficult, and it's not just salary cap space, it's cash spend. Like your casual fan thinks about salary cap space as the end all be all, but it's like the reality is these owners are spending their money. Like the salary cap is not equal to how much cash I'm willing to give out this year. And when I've already gone through free agency and we're getting ready to do rookie contracts, which add up, it's like, which owner is going to be willing to give that guaranteed cash in a rework deal for some of these guys? Me personally, I think it's Mark Andrews, and I think it's just because Isaiah Likely is such a good player, and I think maybe Mark Andrews needs a change of scenery after the way last year ended with the drop 2-point conversion and the fumble in the middle of the field. And like, it was just a bad end of the year for Mark Andrews. He already last year, his numbers look really good, but he went through a stretch in the middle of the season where he was very ineffective. So I think Mark Andrews is the most likely one, but I agree. It makes it very difficult if you don't do it during the draft.
Well, I'm trying to think of like a major contending team that needs a tight end, yeah, right? Because who's going to trade for a veteran tight end? Mark Andrews, like somebody who's trying to win football games now. And like, I'm like looking around playoff teams, everybody's kind of got tight ends. So you're looking for, sort of a complementary piece to rotate in there. And then you can sort of talk yourself into it a little bit, but that's, again, price tag and draft compensation for a guy who's might not be your star number one tight end because you already have your star number one tight end. It's a tough game of tight end musical chairs right now.
Well, I think what you could look for is a team that's maybe in the middle of the pack to looking to take a step forward. I think a team, you don't want to say the Arizona Cardinals because they have Trey McBride, but that's like the level of team that I'm talking about. What about the Carolina Panthers? They don't have a solid number one tight end. I know that they're high on Theo Johnson in New York, but Mark Andrews is a better tight end and more helpful to a young quarterback or a veteran. I think even like the Tennessee Titans. The Titans they have Chigakonkwo, who's like an Isaiah Likely type tight end, but they don't have a certified number one versatile tight end. And that could be a big help to a young quarterback like Cam Ward. So there's Taysom Hill concerns with injury. Juwan Johnson is definitely more of a receiving tight end, although he could still block. I just think there are teams out there who maybe aren't the high-end contenders, the Bills, the Chiefs, the Ravens, stuff like that, who could look for a guy like Mark Andrews just to improve their team. But I agree, it does make it a little bit difficult. But now we'll move from trade options to some veteran free agent options, and there are still some well-known wide receivers on the market. Today's episode is brought to you by the Skylight Calendar. Say goodbye to sticky notes, scribbled plans on the fridge, and overlapping calendar invites. The Skylight Calendar is here to bring clarity to the chaos and help families stay organized without the stress. It is a sleek 15-inch HD digital screen that displays all of your existing calendars, whether it's Google, Apple, Outlook, and more, making it simple to track appointments, practices, dinners, reminders, all in one easy-to-see place. I love the Skylight Calendar. My sister has one for her family. We have one here at my house. You guys know, listen to this, especially you got kids, schedule is so busy. So having the nice 15-inch HD screen that's really easy to use, really easy to see, really easy to manage. It's helpful. And I love how you can color code everybody's different stuff in different colors for different people. It's awesome. Right now, Skylight is offering our listeners $30 off their 15-inch calendars by going to skylightcal.com/NFL. That's skylightcal.com/NFL for $30 off your 15-inch calendar. That is skylightcal.com/NFL. All right, Lauren, let's cap off today's edition of Locked On NFL. We talked about Aaron Rodgers' situation in Pittsburgh. We talked about Jalen Ramsey and some other tradable veterans. Now we need to talk about some of these wide receivers that are still out on the market. And two names really jump out, Amari Cooper and Keenan Allen. And with Amari Cooper, we're hearing some whispers there might be another reunion. We talked about the Ramsey reunion. There might be another reunion with Amari Cooper going to the Dallas Cowboys, and Locked On Cowboys talked about that.
there's just a lot of history here, and I get that most of the the kind of bad blood that existed between McCarthy and Cooper, and some folks probably didn't love the way that whole situation went down inside the team. But I also think that there are plenty of people that are still inside the building that also didn't love the way that Cooper acted and didn't love the way that Cooper's behavior, near the end of the season was, and specifically in regards to, not always making it out to practice because he's a little bruised up, and then what that means to the kind of chemistry and timing of things, and not always putting in effort as a blocker, and so I think that the issue is that the Cowboys spent this whole offseason kind of talking about wanting to get guys with football character and guys who love football, and I don't want to sit here and say that I don't think that Amari Cooper loves football, because I think that's an unfair thing to say. But I think that the way that he expresses his love for football, or the aspects of football that he enjoys, doesn't necessarily line up with the kind of behavior of the folks that the Cowboys are talking about when they say guys who love football. So I just wonder if this isn't really an extremely awkward fit that may end up just happening because of absolute necessity.
Well, I have never had Amari Cooper on my team, so I'm not going to pretend like I know more about Amari Cooper behind the scenes than Landon, who's covered him in Dallas. But what I would say, though, about Amari Cooper is, for a guy who questioning love of football or just how much he wants to work and all of that, if that's what they were doing in Dallas, he sure does play a lot of football. His last, he has never played less than 14 games in his entire career. 16, 14, 15, 16, 15, 17, 15. He played 14 games last year. He got traded, had a little bit of a hand injury, but Amari Cooper is always out on the field. So he may be a guy who doesn't love practicing. He's an older veteran. He's in his 30s. I wouldn't want to practice all the time either. I think that Amari Cooper could still help a team, and I think a team like the Cowboys makes a ton of sense, but a team like the Raiders makes a ton of sense as well. They have Brock Bowers at tight end, but Jacoby Myers. Other than that, Trey Tucker, a young guy. They just drafted Jack Besh. They have a super young group of wide receivers. So I think Amari Cooper definitely should still be in the NFL and should absolutely get an opportunity this year.
Yeah, the Raiders were the team that jumped out to me quite a bit, but I'd also throw in the New York Jets. You got Wilson and not much else. And if you want to support Justin Fields, you want to try and get the Aaron Glenn era going, just add another veteran in that room with some real experience, because it's Garrett Wilson, it's Alan Lazard, and it's Josh Reynolds. This is just not a group with a lot of proven talent there. So to me, I think that'd be a nice fit, although I imagine Amari Cooper might be eyeing more of an instant contender. I mean, we'll see how good the Jets are, but no one's saying Jets are going to win the division and go to the Super Bowl. So he's probably looking around saying, maybe a team that's more in the mix. That's why the Bills made so much sense last year to have him part of that. And I'm not sure that Dallas quite does. They're kind of borderline too.
Yeah, I agree. Well, let me ask you this question then. As someone who covered Keenan Allen last year, which guy do you think can help a team more still right now, Keenan Allen or Amari Cooper?
They're very different roles you're going to have them in, right? So
I agree.
So it kind of depends on what that team needs. If you need a guy who's going to win on the outside and create that separation, that can be Cooper. But I think Keenan Allen as a reliable slot option over the middle of the field can still go a long way. I think his production this past season was more about the Bears' offense being bad and not well coached than it is some sort of major physical drop off. I think Keenan Allen is clearly not the Keenan Allen he once was, but I don't think he's washed up and unable to be productive this season. So I find myself leaning Keenan Allen because I've seen it a lot closer, and Amari Cooper was more of a significant drop off, but the injuries, in Cleveland and Buffalo, certainly Cooper's younger. So if Cooper is 100% healthy and good to go, he's the guy who I'm more likely to get me to 1,000 yards. But I think Keenan Allen is safer, but a lower ceiling. Cooper is more of a wild card, but could have a much higher return on investment if everything works out.
No, I agree. I'm going with Keenan Allen as well. I just think what he can give, I think he can be helpful in the red zone because he's a little bit bigger and stronger. I think that's huge. Also, the slot versatility, that's critical to me. And when you're dealing with maybe a young quarterback or something like that, having a bigger slot option is huge. I would actually go with Keenan Allen as well, but I think both guys end up with jobs by the time the season comes around.
Well, and Keenan Allen had previously expressed some sentiments of wanting to finish his career in LA or potentially come back to Chicago, but it kind of had said he might not be open to just any old team coming. I think he's going to be pretty picky about where he wants to play for his final season. I think that's the biggest reason why he hasn't signed yet.
Yeah, well, when you've made the money that he has and had the career he has, you can afford to be picky about what you want to do. But man, learning from Keenan Allen would be a great thing for Luther Burden.
Well, I think it'd be cool if he came back to the Chargers, another one of these reunions we've been talking about today.
Yeah.
You know, they still, I mean, that's Ladd McConkey's in the slot there, but like, can you find ways to make it work with everybody?
Of course.
You could still use more weapons there for Justin Herbert. I don't necessarily trust Mike Williams or Quentin Johnston. They drafted Trey Harris in the second round. That's great, but like, he's a good football player. You'll find a way to make it work.
Yeah, I'm with you there. And I think Ladd McConkey could definitely play Z too. So it's not like he has to be in the slot. But either way, that's going to do it for today's edition of Locked On NFL. I am your host, the Madman Tyler Rowland, for my co-host, Lauren Cox. As I tell you every episode, thanks for tuning in and stay safe out there.